Hey guys, I'm the Dragonsbeard and I'm back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today, I've got another Clanboss team for you. This one is called the Myth Heiress. So when Deadwood came out with his first version of the Myth Heiress that was put together on a test server, I decided that I was going to try to tweak it a little bit and then get the speeds to run at a 3-to-1 ratio for the DPS. And you might have seen this one as the version that he featured on his channel called the Ultimate Myth Heir. He used Ninja as the DPS options and was able to achieve 1 key damage without even having a weaken in the team. So what I'm doing is putting this together on my own account, and we're going to try out a couple different DPS just to kind of see how it scales with various champions and see what kind of numbers we can put up. Before I show you the team, I do want to do the giveaway from last week's Budget Myth Eater video. So there were 20 of you that actually entered into the raffle for an account takeover, which I'm going to do live right now. So here we go. All right, so congratulations to Baragor Norgrimson. So I hope I said that at least remotely correct. I'll get in touch with you on YouTube and we'll set up a time where we can get this account takeover done. So congratulations. All right, for the champions, first up we've got Demytha. So she is our fastest champion and she's running in my comp at 283 speed. We've got her crit capped. We've got some attack and crit damage stats on her, but in order to run her that fast, I didn't have the ability to go crazy on offensive stats. Same concept here as what we've seen in some of the other teams. She runs at the 3-to-1 ratio and puts block damage up immediately before the clan boss takes his turn. And then the extension here is important because the other part of the namesake is Heiress, the rare champion, and she puts up the increased speed, which Demytha is going to extend. So it's all about this A2 ability, which is really unique for a rare specifically to have this, the big version of increased speed. 3-turn cooldown, 2-turn duration, which then turns into a 3-turn duration with Demytha. It's crazy. And then adding in the cleanse that she does after the ability, the remove 1 random debuffs from all allies. That will help us take off the affinity debuffs after the second AoE, and it will also help us take off the stun. So anybody in the team can be stunned so long as it's not her, and she's going to be able to take that off immediately. In the 3-to-1 version of this team, what makes it super unique is that she goes first in the turn order and she's able to take that off right away. So you don't have the risk of certain champions being able to be stunned or certain other ones being able to be stunned. The only time that you have to do something crazy involving the stun targeting is we bring in another force champion. That way it prevents her from being the one who gets stunned because she cannot cleanse herself. So the next 2 champions we're bringing in here are here to reduce the speeds needed for Demytha and Heiress to run at that 3-to-1 ratio. So first up is Deacon. He's got this A3 with a 15% turn meter fill and the extra turn together, which makes this a 2-turn cooldown effectively, and he's going to use that every single turn. And the other thing that he's going to do every single turn is do the decreased defense. So if you have him paired up with a damage dealer who doesn't bring that, then he can offer that as long as you put accuracy into his build. To reduce the speeds even further, we've got the ally speeds in all battles. That's the only one that works in Clanboss, 19%, pretty significant. And then Seeker is going to take care of the rest of the turn meter filling. So he has a bigger boost. It's a 30% boost. And then he's also, since there's a lot of attack champions in this team, he's going to bring that increased attack. And it's going to be up the entire time because he's going twice per turn and it gets extended. And with that extra turn mechanic, it works the exact same way that Deacon's does, effectively a 2-turn cooldown. So him and Deacon only need to run at a 2-to-1 ratio, so their speeds are lower. He's at 181 speed and 4.7k attack with crit capped and decent crit damage. We don't need accuracy for Seeker. But then on Deacon, he is 197 speed, a little faster, 3600 attack, almost crit cap, 211 crit damage, and then we do need accuracy for the decreased defense. I'm pairing him up with a champion that does have the decreased defense when I'm running him alongside Anax, but I also tested a few runs with him alongside someone like Athel or Turvold, and I wanted to make sure that he was offering that decreased defense even if we didn't have somebody else here. So in the last slot, you really have a lot of flexibility as far as who you're going to use as your damage dealer. You're going to want somebody that brings weaken, and you're going to want somebody that brings preferably poison or a lot of raw damage. So Dracomorph is a natural choice just because he does both of those things. I've used Fayne a lot in some of my recent videos with her having the weaken and the poisons as well and hitting hard. But in this case, I wanted to try somebody new and specifically a champion that does amazingly in block damage teams. And that is Anax. And the reason why he does well with block damage is this passive can be very difficult to incorporate him into certain speed tunes. If you put him in the Bad Eater, for example, he has to have a certain version of the Bad Eater, which puts him first in the turn order, because the extra turn proccing at the wrong time can cause him to lose the Unkillable buffs or jump out of the turn order or what have. So for him, with block damage, you don't ever have to worry about that active effect happening because he will never drop below 10% health. I think as early as turn 3, he's protected with block damage in this team, so the Clanboss is not hitting hard enough at that point in order to trigger that passive. So what he does is the weaken on his A3, which is a great damage dealer as well. It hits hard. And then he's also got poisons, which last for 3 turns. So, he can hit twice. He can stack 2 of those when he's fully booked. And then the 3-turn duration is going to make it to where he's the only one that we need to have bringing in poison in the team because he's going 3 to 1. So his poisons from a couple turns ago are still going to be on there when we lap back around to it. He also does have decreased defense on his A1, so if I didn't have Deacon in here, he could be bringing that. But again, I did want to try a few different champions out and see how they did, so we pretended that he didn't have the decreased defense as far as when I was putting this together. So one thing I have to call attention to in Anax's build is that since he has a very tight speed range of 257 to 259, and that can even vary a little bit with speed and perception sets, it was very difficult for me to have him land in that range while still balancing all the other stats. High attack and high crit damage and enough accuracy for the poisons while remaining crit capped. So I ran it through the optimizer, and in order for me to get crit capped, I would have to drop his crit damage all the way down to 190 or get really lucky with glyphs. So I just decided to run it as is, and he is still going to do a tremendous amount of damage even without being crit capped. So that's like a big no-no for me to not crit cap somebody, but I think in this case it makes a lot of sense because the debuffs that he's bringing and the poison that he's bringing are more important than just the overall raw damage that he's dealing. So the reason why I haven't shown you Masteries on any of the champions so far is that the Mastery builds that I have on them right now are not what I would use if I was putting this team together from scratch. For offense tree, it's going to be pretty straightforward. You're going to want to go down to either War Master if it's a single or double hit champion, or Giant Slayer if it's a multi-hitter, Athel or Rosin or somebody like that. But then for defense tree, we usually do something going down towards Retribution. But we've got block damage up in this team for the entirety of the fight. And that's going to mean that Retribution cannot go off. You do have the ability to proc Deterrence because in this team somebody actually is taking the stun and then it's getting cleansed. But, we're talking about 16, 17 stuns throughout the entire fight at a 20% chance. So at most, you're going to get 3 extra counterattacks just from that Deterrence Mastery over the course of the fight. I would prefer to have the support tree for extra accuracy on any of the champions that need it, as well as the extra stats from Lower Steel and some of the speeds being so high. If you're running speed sets on them, that can help that as well. On Anax, I went with Sniper and Master Hexer since that's beneficial for him. And then on Heiress, you would want to make sure that you have the Steadfast Mastery, because as I mentioned, if you're running Heiress against Spirit, she's going to be the one that gets targeted unless you have another Force champion in there, and then Heiress would need to have the Steadfast Mastery while that other stun target would not. You could use Geomancer for that, Rosin, anybody like that. That's just a damage dealer that it won't hurt if they get stunned. So I did mention in the beginning that there was a little bit of flexibility on one of the champions, and that's with Heiress. So she could come out and you could bring in someone like Lydia that has this A2. She has the same 30% increased speed buff on a 3-turn cooldown and 2-turn duration, so she could do that job. She also has that weaken covered if you wanted to run somebody else in that slot. Other choice would be Archmage Helmet. So with his A3, he's got that same increased speed. He also brings some offensive buffs on the 3-turn cooldown, 2-turn duration that gets extended. And then you've also got the Void Legendary Barbarian Tuhanarak. So, she's probably going to be the least likely with her being relatively new and also a Void Lego, but she has the ability to do the increased speed that books down to a 3-turn cooldown, same deal. And she can take care of the cleansing, whereas the other two that I just showed cannot, because she's got that Doom Priest style passive. So she goes in that first slot. The cool part about her versus Heiress is that you do not need to run a substitute stun tank against Spirit Affinity, because even if she herself gets stunned, she can still take it off of herself the same way that Doom Priest does. So Tuhanarak would be like the ultimate option for that spot if you have her. And if you don't have any of those 3 and you still want to use Heiress, you can go over to Campaign, and she's actually farmable. So go to Campaign Stage 6, Palace of Aravia here, and then you can see that she is one of the drops. So I had to sink about 1,800 energy into farming this because I didn't want to have to get lucky and pull her from a shard, and I had fed mine already. Alright, real quick before we go, I want to show you the AI setup. So for the champions, Deacon and Seeker don't need any type of special configuration. Anax also doesn't need special configuration, but when I was running Athel in this slot, I just locked her to use only her A1 to keep up weaken and Giant Slayer damage. So for Demytha, She just needs to be set up to where her A2 is the priority. We are going to manually force her to open with her A3, and then after that, we want her to do her A2 on cooldown. And then for Heiress, she occasionally will not use her A2 when you want her to, so we're just going to force her to do that on cooldown by making it first priority. I didn't mention this earlier, but she's actually going to get a chance to counterattack every single time the Clanboss hits our team, just because of her passive. So if you have a damage dealer that does not have poison, she is a great candidate for a toxic set for that reason. So I'm going to take off auto because, again, there's that short setup, and show you kind of how you'll manually open the fight. So we're going to do the block damage right off the bat. It's going to fall off, but that's just to set up the sinks the way we want them to. We're going to do increased speed from Heiress, and then weaken from Anax, decrease defense from Deacon, and then we're not going to use Seeker's A2 here. We're going to use an A1 instead. Clanboss is going to go, and then we will open up with extension, A1 from Heiress, poisons from Anax with his A2, and then after we do this A1 from Deacon, we are able to kick this over on auto. What's going to happen right as the Clanboss puts off the debuffs is that you're going to see Heiress counterattack from her passive, and then she's immediately going to use her A2, refresh that increased speed buff, and then cleanse the whole team. And that just happened there. So that's going to continue for the rest of the fight. Even if you run this on Spirit, I've tested it, that extra tick that the entire team has of the increased or decreased speed debuff does not hurt anything as far as the tune. And it's very tightly tuned to operate that way with her going first. So there we go. She takes the stun off of Seeker, and that cycle will repeat. So I'm going to let this run. It's a long fight, 3-to-1 ratio on 2 of the champions, on 3 of the champions, and then 2-to-1 on the rest. So there's a lot of turns. And then I will meet you at the end. Alright, so here we are, 83 million damage, so that's very healthily into 1 key territory. I think that even if you take away the strong affinity bonus for Anax against Force, against Void, it's going to be an easy 1 key as well. You got Deacon and Seeker, who are both in that 11 to 12 million range. You've got Demytha at 6, and then Heiress doing a considerable amount of damage on her own, 13.4 million, for a rare that's not even maxed level 60 yet. I have seen her do in a similar team 20 million damage, but that's in a team that did not have a poisoner, so she was able to rock that toxic set and stack a ton of poison on her own. So keep in mind, I did not have her or anybody else in a toxic set for this specific team, just because we wanted to save all those spots for Anax himself. but the big dude putting up 40.4 million. I think that's the highest I've gotten from anybody who isn't Turvold in any of my teams. So very respectable damage from him. He loves the block damage, and he can do a lot of work as long as you have him set up at that 3-to-1 ratio. So I did want to show you this in the calculator real quick, just so you can kind of see what the pattern looks like. So I plugged all my speeds in here. For Godseeker, we're using her in place of Demytha. We've just adjusted her A3 cooldown and we've flipped it to A2 priority, just like the custom AI there. And what we're looking for is that she should be doing this Unkillable at the end of the turn cycle. So you can see that as early as turn 2, that falls into sync, and then that stays the rest of the way. For the damage dealer, the speeds will vary based off of the base speed of your champion. So for example, when I was using Athel, then she was able to work at 256 because the true speed is what we're going off of here. If I switch that over to Anax, then you're going to see that he needs to be a little faster because his base speed is slower. So 256 is not fast enough for him. You got to go up to 258 or 259 in order for him to work, but 260 would be too fast. So kind of a tight speed range there. Seeker and Deacon have a little bit more play. Heiress can go a little faster. Godseeker can go a little faster. So it's a really tight speed range for the damage dealer. But the cool part is that it will also work on Nightmare. So if we switch it to Nightmare, you still see that Unkillable at the end of the turn cycle, and Heiress going first. So that's what you're looking for. And then you can do that also on Brutal. So turn 4 is when it falls in sync to where Heiress goes first, and then Unkillable at the end. It'll work on Hard as well, but Heiress doesn't start to be the top of the turn order until you get to turn count 5. So it might have some issues against Spirit Affinity, or if the wrong person gets stunned somewhere up here. Alright guys, that's going to be it for the 3-to-1 version of the Myth Heiress comp. So I'm not completely done with this one. One of the things I want to do next is I'm going to put Turvold into the team, and we're going to run him on the fast version, hitting more often, versus the 2-to-1 slower version, hitting harder, and we're going to see which one comes out on top. If you've been around the channel for a while, you'll know that Turvold's one of my boys, and he's been featured in a lot of my early content, so I want to see him make a resurgence and get some of his gear back, because he's unemployed right now. I borrowed his pieces to give to some of the champions in this team. So until then, I've been the Dragon's Beard. Thanks for watching.